Hello, everybody, and welcome to a conversation that we wanted to have about the fact that we're all getting a little bit older. And for me, that's feels very real. 53 years of age now, and some bits hurt a little bit more than they did 5 years ago. Today, with me in the studio, I've got Katie Knapton and Cecilia Trueman, who have come to talk to all of you about what it is that they do. And we might be a little bit disruptive and actually talk about maybe as we go into old age, we might want to stay a little bit more active. We might actually want to not go into a care home, although that could be an option for some of us, but we might want to continue working. We might want to remain a bit more independent. And so that's part of the conversation today. Katie, Cecilia, please do introduce yourself. We'll start with Katie. Katie, tell us a little bit about you.
So, hi Graham, nice to see you again. So I'm Katie Knapton. I'm a physiotherapist. I have been for rather a long time. Talking about age, you're just a baby, Graham. Got a few years on you. And I work both in sole practice in Sussex, but I also run an online video consultation service. And I currently am chair of Physio First, a private physiotherapy UK organisation. So keeps me busy.
There we go. And Cecilia, tell us a bit about you.
Okay. So yes, hi. So I trained as a nurse. I was a nurse for years, but I went into supporting the elderly. And what I'm doing now with ILA is helping people to remain in their home as long as possible, as independently as they can be. So as things start to fail, whether it's physically or mentally, we can help put in things to help people to stay in their home and live as well as they can in their home. And it might be just simply some support from somebody, as little or as often as they want. So we introduce people that can do that sort of help. And it might be somebody that does some cleaning, or it might be somebody that does some cooking, or it might be to help them to go to appointments, remember what's in their diary and what to do normal household chores. And then if they need care, then we can help them get a care agency on board. And whatever it is that's, we start to struggle and need, then we help.
It's interesting. I was talking about what you did to somebody the other day, and they said, "I want that now."
So do I.
I don't want to wait until I'm old. I want that now.
I know.
And they actually said, "Isn't that called a butler?"
Yes.
Quite interestingly, no, not quite, but it's interesting point. In some ways, I expect all of us would like that little bit of extra help. Yes.
Like, but not necessarily need. So now Cecilia's that really excites me, because that gives a huge opportunity to stay in their established routines, their own home environment. But we also, I'm worried, Graham, when you say, "Oh, that'd be nice." Now we need to be able to keep our independence as much as is possible.
Much as we can.
It's great for safety and being able to have that ability. So what a fantastic service. But my thing is also we need to push that preventative piece. So the more that we can keep people as strong and active and independent with some support that's required, which is what Cecilia's providing, which is fabulous, the better. But we need to get that message out about age just being a number. Now, I went skiing with my 86-year-old father, and it was great, and he's still a better skier than me. So let's not talk about things having to deteriorate. Yes, we are progressively getting weaker, but we can fight against it, and we can really have that right to remain in our home, because we know that once we go into a care home, in general, your independence is totally removed. Now, there are times that it is appropriate, absolutely. And obviously, the dementia story is a tricky one to manage. But the longer we can keep people involved, socializing, having the right support, and in their own home environments, the better and the healthier and the nicer old age will be. So, get squatting, get doing your press ups, keep everything acting, moving whilst you can is my motto.
And that's the thing, it's about prompting the things that you want to do and keeping them going. But sometimes we just run out of that bit that we need, and we need that help. But to keep going, to keep and go in the right direction rather than stopping. So whatever it is, we're not going to take over. And in fact, what the support does is works with that person. You know, what is it you like? How do you like to do it? And can I do that bit? Because that will help you do that bit. We're not doing
You're enabling and enhancing something that actually at the moment it seems to be you're either going to a home because you're not coping in your own home environment, or, you know, or you're just going to struggle and you end up in hospital and then go into care home that way. So no, you're an enabler. Let's call it an enabling. You're enabling and enhancing people's life as things are getting trickier, but you will help them to maintain a better quality. And that's what
it is a better quality. And what we know and want, we don't want necessarily move to somewhere else. We want to carry on as we are. But in order to do that, what have we got to do? You might want to move to a different place, but you might need help to do that, you know.
And also let's talk into the other aspect of it. So far we've talked about it from the person receiving care's perspective, and I think that's fundamental. But actually, I think the other piece here is the other people involved in care quite often are, when it gets to it, family, aren't they? Right? Mm-hmm. And it's really part of that support that you give, and actually Katie you give as well, are actually helping the family as well. Because if we end up with parents who can't move, can't get about, can't do this, can't do that, and then the only option is to put them into a home or whatever, because that's the only way that we can see them as being supported, then that impacts us emotionally, maybe, as the people that were caring for them. Now, if we can find other ways of saying we need a break, I can look after mum and dad, but I want to go out and, you know, watch Dua Lipa in London for the weekend or whatever. Who's going to look after mum and dad? Is someone going to be able to pop in and just make sure that they're okay when they're doing this bit? Right. And that actually Katie's looking after them in terms of, you know, keeping them moving and whatever. And actually, I know that they're better on their feet and can get up and down the stairs. Then that's great, isn't it? You know?
Oh, I mean, yes. I mean, I think the service that Cecilia's doing is paramount for that horrible carer guilt you would have, you know, if you are in a position that is, you know, it is almost impossible to feel you can go out. So just having that relief and support that your loved one is being looked after by someone who's skilled, knowledgeable, knows them, and you know they've been vetted, just wow, that just takes a huge amount of stress off, because it's a stressful environment. You know, we go through life, don't we? And if you have kids, and you have that responsibility. You get to the stage your kids are grown up and you think life's going to be a bit easier, and then you've got elderly parents to try and manage. It never stops.
It doesn't stop, but it just gives a bit of relief. And you know, you can't be there all the time anyway, even if you want to have fun. So you need contingencies and options, and you don't have to use those options, but they're there if you want them. And, and I think, you know, somebody you trust.
And I think it's options that are slowly disappearing for people as well, because people don't necessarily have the pensions that people used to have, right? People aren't retiring at the same age that they used to be able to retire at, because, you know, the state pension or the multiple pensions that they may have had, you know, aren't giving the return that once was there. People, because the cost of living has gone up so much, doesn't mean people don't necessarily have the savings that they used to have put aside to, you know, secure them in terms of a lifestyle in older age.
Also, families don't necessarily live near each other, so they might want to go and stay with their relative, but then they can't be there all the time. They need to know there's somebody else who can pop in. I think, you know, a lot of people do live quite a long way away from their family. I do. My mum lives in Yorkshire, so.
It's interesting, isn't it? How many people get moved, do you think, in their older age to somewhere that they perhaps don't necessarily want to move to because they have to be nearer the family or whatever else? Whereas actually, if we can find more ways of letting somebody pop in as and when, right, that's good. And actually, if they can still get on a train and use public transport and things like that because they're a bit more active, then all of those things can happen, right? But as soon as
sometimes it's going with somebody on public transport just to have that confidence and encouragement, because it's nicer very often to travel with somebody, and then you become more active and you're doing things, and
Katie, I'd love to ask you, I mean, because obviously you work within the corporate world. Are people talking about old age and, end of life, full stop? I mean, is it something that's coming into sort of well-being agendas and EDI and all of this sort of thing, or not?
I mean, it needs to be. There is, I mean, we do produce various reports on presentations. And so, the presentation of an NMSK condition is more likely to happen the older your workforce is. So, the evidence is there. Whether I would say that people are ready for it is a different matter, but it's clearly a statement of fact. We've got the figures. There's more people living with comorbidities. So yes, we're living longer, but are we living healthier? No, not necessarily. Those messages haven't got through yet. There is stuff that we can put in place. And I think that the corporates and the large commercial organizations, need to do some work in the space. We could talk about whether the government is or isn't, but, the message, our society has issues. There is big problems coming around the corner in the next 20 years or so. So we owe it to the next generation to try and educate and try and get people being more recognizing their self-efficacy. We do have some responsibility, but we need to be supported in those. So when you look at, modern buildings or housing estates, they're conducive to a car. They don't think about encourage people to walk. So there's, it's fascinating when you start opening up that conversation and thinking about it in a larger perspective.
Oh, tell me about it. Whenever I go to school to do the school run, there are cars there. We do tend to drive, but that's because we live, several miles out. But there are cars there from like 50 yards down the road. And you think, why? Why? You literally live within walking distance of the school, and yet people seem to drive everywhere these days rather than, get out there and walk. Why? We're seeming to condition ourselves as a society to become, inactive.
Condition ourselves to be deconditioned.
Yeah. Even though we know actually that getting out and walking is great for our mental health as well as our physical health, and we know that all of the benefits of it. We seem to think, well, actually, no, I'm just gonna cocoon myself in a sedentary lifestyle, and that's fine.
But it's frightening because, I mean, my main thing is so we're quite well trained to clean our teeth. So our dental health, we can talk about the latest population on that, great. But people in general will clean their teeth at least once or twice a day. And we do that usually without thinking about it. Yet we will not invest any time into our physical well-being, which also has a knock-on effect with our mental well-being. So why is that? Why have we not worked it out? We've got the evidence. We all sort of know it. Not everybody totally gets it. You can't wait until you're retired to get fit. You need to get fit, healthy and strong in your 60s. In your 50s, even better, even in your 40s. But do you know what I mean? You cannot wait, I'll do that once I've got time. You're never going to feel you have time. You just need to fit it in. It isn't a luxury. This is what drives me mad. It is, put the time in. It's not necessarily going to be pleasant, not necessarily going to be something you totally enjoy, but you will reap the rewards. If you get strong now into your 70s, 80s, you will have a far better quality of life. And we've got the evidence for that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No.
And it can also be a form of socializing. I played tennis with a 94-year-old.
Yay!
And it's not just the physical, it's the
Absolutely.
mental, because she's socializing like a teenager.
Yeah.
She is like a teenager.
Oh, that is fabulous. Yeah, loneliness and deconditioning go hand in hand. So, you know, and depression and all sorts of mental, you know, so loneliness and deconditioning. So anything that incorporates some socialization and preferably some movement, but I don't really care, even if it's just a little bit of movement, is a good thing.
Yeah. Where do I know Cecilia in particular, this isn't your area, but it'd be interesting to get both of your opinions on it. But where do you think this kind of problem with inactivity comes from? I personally think part of it comes from actually sort of online body coaches, whatever, because we're kind of inundated with some of the time with examples of, you know, what you should be doing, right, which are so over the top that I think it almost creates people or
it's a turn off.
Yes,
you're never going to. It's like if you go to a physio and they give you 20 exercises and you're not someone that particularly likes exercises, doesn't see the point of them, they don't feel relevant to you. How ridiculous is that? You need to have 3 things that perhaps you do. You can tolerate doing, you know why you're doing them. So, you know, like sit to stand squats are quite often so you can get out of the chair. So if you sit in a lower chair, you can still get out of it without having to get people hoisting you up. You know, so you've got to have a reason for doing it. But if you have a few things, literally just doing something is better than doing nothing. And I think you're right. It's just got to be targeted right for you. So I think once people can associate with it, then they will hopefully, and they've got support. So, you know, it's checking that any carers coming in are supporting them to be, if they're trying to make themselves more active or do more, or they've been given things to do, that they're supported with that. Yeah, but it's a change of mindset. And you're right. You know, I talk to my patients often. I said, oh, you know, they go, well, should I join a gym? And I said, well, do you want to don lycra and is that your scene? And they go, not at all. And I go, so what's the point? There's no point starting something that you're not going to finish. Do something that is achievable.
But we all get inundated with it. You know, I get the DMs through my LinkedIn and whatever. It's like you've probably got a dad bod. You need to lose that. You need to have abs like Adonis, right? And you need to be losing like 2 stone, 3 stone, and you need to be hitting the gym 6 times a day. And you think, I've got a life.
You're not going to do that, though, are you?
I know. It's. You know, I think that's it, though. I think actually that causes a kind of mental blockage for anybody.
Oh, absolutely.
It's got to be realistic for each person. And sometimes we just have one friendly support person who goes into a client and says, well, let's go for a walk now, or let's go shopping. That's active, and they're going out, they're moving, fresh air, moving, rather than sitting in the chair all day.
I'm betting if we took some of Katie's clients who are more elderly, and we took some of your clients who are more elderly, and we actually talked to them about the value of independent living, right? And we started showing that to some people that were my age and made them reframe it in terms of rethinking, if I make some small changes now, right? I want to be like Derek over there, or call him Derek. It could be a Janice, right? But I want to be more like Derek over there, that when I get to 70, 80 or whatever, I want to be able to still get out from time to time, but I might need a little bit of support. I still want to be able to move and whatever. I'd start to think now about what I'm doing, and I'd start to think now about what kind of care, or what care should look like when I'm older. And that will have an impact upon the way that I approach my physical activity now as well. Do we not think?
I think that's great. I mean, I've treated up to 100-odd-year-old who was fabulous. In fact, a bomber pilot who used to do his exercises every morning that he'd done ever since. Yeah, so he was brilliant. But yeah, and I think people, so my thing is that we don't push older people enough. So people do not train hard enough or lift hard enough. We need to push people that they're actually they're not fragile. you can really, you need to graduate things up. You need to bring things in appropriate. But, someone will come in who's, say, 75 and sort of lost a bit of confidence, might have had a bit of a trip and a stumble, and I go, all right, okay, well, how did you get up? Oh, I struggled to get up. Right, let's do that first. We need to teach you how to get up from the floor. Some of it might take a bit of work, but there are tricks and methods of doing these sorts of things. So I think you're absolutely right. So if we can get ingrained in your 50s and your 60s, it will help.
Yeah.
And it is also confidence and also get going, because if I go back to the lady who's 94, when she comes onto the court, she's sort of wants somebody to walk with her. But once she's on the court and she's been moving a bit, then she's fine and off she goes.
Yeah, putting whatever those support mechanisms are to enable you to remain as active as you can be.
Yeah.
That is actually no different from a child, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. If you took a child to play tennis for the first time or whatever, you would probably support them, and you'd probably hold them and show them various things. You'd make them feel comfortable that they're not going to fall over all of the time. And then, as you say, once they get their confidence up, they just go, they fly.
But it's also getting the muscles moving, because like when you get up in the morning, I don't know whether you get that, but I do. They don't work quite as well as they did in the evening.
Katie flies out of bed.
Sometimes. Yeah, it's that. And then the other thing is as we talked about carers. So if you've got a live-in carers, whether that's a husband or whatever, it's also trying to talk together that they don't do too much for the person who's struggling a bit. So it's working out what the boundaries are, because quite often you get my husband's, no, it's never going to happen, subservient wives who basically do everything rather quickly. So it's also, some of it's a learning thing. So they may well need support if you want to go out as the carer, but it's also checking that you're not overdoing it. So you're not putting their shoes on when actually they can probably perfectly well do it themselves. It might take longer, but they can actually do it. So it's getting that balance between taking control as a parent potentially, but also trying to get them to maintain as much independence as possible. So I quite often have to have a strong word with carers.
Do we for both of you, is this something that we need to do a little bit of education piece around GPs around as well? Because I'm just going to say, how many GPs immediately go, right, you've got this, you need the pills or whatever, you need the medication to help you with that, etc. I don't want to get into too controversial bit, but as opposed to, right, and then maybe you need to start thinking about this line of care or this line of care, as opposed to actually let's keep you going. And is that an educational piece around for GPs? And I'm gonna be really friendly to GPs and say it's really difficult, because they get that's why they're called GPs. They get generalized care things in. But actually, do we need to talk about alternatives of care as we get older to GPs as well, so that they understand the full gamut of what could be available within their area?
Yeah, I mean, it's hugely variable, isn't it? What advice they give to be a bit more politically sensitive about it. But I mean, and they don't have much time. And let's face it, a lot of patients are struggling to get in to see GPs. And by the time they do, their problems either, multiplied and they've got so many comorbidities. But the tendency is with like high blood pressures, you put on blood pressure tablets, when actually we know that diet and exercise, if we get those in early, you might not need them. But we also know that we don't want people walking around with high blood pressure because of the risk of strokes, heart attacks, So it's a complex. So it is complicated, I think.
But also GPs, they refer to the social prescriber now, who then finds what's other options for people that, and what I was going to say also is that with the support that we give, it's independent support. So you're meeting that person, getting to know that person, to do tasks with them. Whereas if you are referred to a care agency, which are very valuable and they are needed, particularly when you need somebody to come in and help you wash, or with your medication, that has to be a team, because you've got to guarantee somebody's coming in. Whereas this is different. This is independent care. It's an independent person who you get to know, and you, like you say, a bit like a butler, because you fashion it to how you want it. You get on with that person and trust them, and you work with them.
And that's great, actually, because from that independence point of view, they can learn that you don't want them to do other things. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, the client is totally in control. They can fashion it the way they want to, and obviously the support person will prompt, but they can only do what the client will.
Do you know what? In real life, those little nuances make all of the difference. I mean, I remember when I was doing workplace assessments, even making little adjustments like taking a stapler off of somebody's desk, because as part of what they're doing, they sit there stapling and putting it on the other side of the room, so that once a day they have to get up and walk to the opposite side of the room to do something for 10 minutes. Makes a difference. When people have got inactivity kind of built in around what they do, or they create an environment around them of inactivity, those little nuances make a big difference. So if you've got a carer going in who knows that person and knows that that person is capable of certain things, so they don't put the kettle on for them, but they enable them to go and put the kettle on, but they will sit with them and have the cup of tea with them. That's a big difference between somebody that just goes, no, I'm caring for you and I've got to do this and this for you, regardless of, right? Because actually what you're then doing is you're enabling that person to go as far as they possibly can without it being a problem. Right. And that's what both of you are trying to do, is enable that person to be as active as they possibly can safely.
As safely as you can. I mean, there's always caveats, isn't there? I mean, I remember seeing this lady in a nursing home. I'd seen her when she was living in her own home, and then she moved into a nursing home following some falls and some medical issues. And she was sat on one of those cushions that alarms whenever she moves, and she's told she couldn't move, that she had to commode and And I just said, look, Mary, you can either just sit there until you die, or at least walk to your perfectly nice ensuite. And yes, there's the risk you can fall, but at least then also, if someone chooses to take you out, you know that you're able to still do a bit of movement and you could be taken out. So you have an opportunity. And we sat there and she went, oh, but they don't want me to fall. I said, no one wants you to fall, but life is for living, not just for sitting. And so Mary and I went and we did the stairs, and she, certainly had a couple more years of where people would pick her up and take her to stuff because she knew she could manage it. Yeah. But life it's not without risks. We can't remove all risks, but it's quality, happiness. There's just so much more to it than staying safe.
Yeah. We have to take some risks, but we put contingencies in place.
Yeah, appropriate risk management, etc., is absolutely called for. My dad used to go to me, well, do you think I should go? Do you think I should go skiing this year, or do you think it's a bit too dangerous? And I said, look, Dad, if you can afford it, you're happy to go, you feel well enough, what a way to go. You could die just walking out and trying to cross the road. So let's just, move on with it.
Yeah.
You mentioned it earlier, actually, I think, or one of you mentioned it earlier, that actually when it's family involved, sometimes we probably mitigate the risk a bit too much, right? We probably squeeze, the individual into non-movement a little bit too much, because we don't know what's safe and what's not, and we're not necessarily trained in that area.
Well, so yes, and also you're going to have to live with the consequences if something goes wrong. Yeah. So I absolutely get that.
But all families are different. You get some that are more dominant than others. Some people
just get on with it, Dad.
Yeah,
families are interesting. Let's face it.
Yes, so the dynamics are all different, and you just got to work with it. I mean, I can't suggest anything to my father, for instance. He'll say, well, I'll do it. I say, well, do it then.
Yeah. Can I ask both of you, do you get feedback from family of people that you're looking after in terms of clients? Do they say, oh, well, I've noticed this?
So, well, I mean, it's really important to have the family on side anyway, so they know you as well. If the client is happy with that, some clients don't want to have anything to do with their family, therefore you can't. No. But it is a bonus to be able to communicate with the family, because you can work together. And then when you are working together, they really see the value of it, and they will tell you. And it is fun. It's fun to all work together, the client, the family, and the support person.
I imagine it actually is a relief for them in some respects.
Well, for the family, yes, because they've got someone. Sometimes there isn't a black and white answer. You've got to talk to someone. What do we do? What are the options? And then we can do from our professional side and our experience what is available, and then they can make that choice as a family what to do. I
think that's lovely. That actually, on a very flowing basis, that the family are able to have those conversations and then make those decisions. I'm pretty certain that can't be done in the same kind of organic way if you then put somebody into a home. I could be wrong, but I would imagine that, because there's just so much duty of care that's going on within a home, that you couldn't possibly have the same quality kind of backwards and forwards conversations about what should we do today if he's going here to have his hair cut or whatever. It would be really difficult to have that if you're looking after 66 people within a home. Maybe it does happen, but I just imagine that with a kind of a one-to-one situation, it is much easier to have those conversations very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it's just different when you're in a home. We do actually have support with people who go in to see people in a home because they particularly want the one-to-one.
Right.
So, for instance, the daughter lives in Australia, can't visit, so we have somebody that she knows and visits. And in the early days, they used to go out together to National Trust or a cafe or whatever. But now with the dementia that's set in, it's more suitable to stay there and do activities with her.
Right.
That one-to-one is really important, because when you're in a home, you're sharing the carers.
Yep.
That's the difference.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. What about you, Katie? Did you get that kind of?
Well, I get all sorts of feedback, and I do work across generations. So you've got to remember that they'll go, oh yeah, you sorted grandma out, and she's now walking back much better, and all of those sorts of things. So you do get positive, and mainly again, much the same, Cecilia, in that you're giving some personalised stuff. So you're really relating. What does that person want to be able to do? And obviously, as a physio, we tend to always be goal driven, so there's usually got to be some sort of goal, but it's got to be relatable and specifically to them. But you achieve things and people feel better for it. And I think anything that enhances someone's quality of life, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how old you are, you want to still have some quality. And if we can be enablers for that, how good does that feel?
Yeah. Just to reiterate, we're not having to go at like care homes or domiciliary care. Everything has its place.
But there's limitations to the system. I mean, we know, so I'm afraid that that NHS physio is restricted. It's really hard to get domiciliary physio out there. So often people do need to call in and use the private sector. So we need to check that they're getting value for when they do, and that's what we hopefully do deliver.
And also that I've noticed, Katie, is that I'm quite often in the past I've suggested to people when they come out of hospital that they actually get a private physio, because the NHS is going to take like months, at least weeks before, and by then you've gone backwards in what you can do.
Yeah.
Every day spent in bed when you're over 75 is significant muscle wastage.
Yeah. So I mean, And sometimes you have to spell that out, because otherwise you just go along with what's on offer. So, I have introduced private physiotherapists to people, and they've come out. And it is dependent on whether that's what they want to pay for. But I'll spell it out to them that, you're going backwards.
This has been a great conversation, I think. I mean, hopefully it will stimulate people into, watching or listening to this conversation. It will stimulate them into, asking more questions about care of people that, they are looking after, but also thinking about their own care. And, I'm quite passionate about trying to get people to start thinking about care, especially in the corporate world, a lot sooner, right? When we start to look at, I was doing some research earlier. I haven't got it in front of me now, but I was doing some research earlier about just how much absenteeism is caused in the workplace because of anxiety over care, or people having to look after mum or dad, how that affects even things like presenteeism, etc. It's massive figures in the UK, right? And yet businesses aren't necessarily having conversations with people about care.
Don't even start me on any of it. I was at the Health and Wellbeing at Work conference, and we were talking about, predominantly about MSK, and we know the return of investment of actually putting something in terms of support, so physio service or whatever. They get more than that, get at least £3 back for every £1 spent, but we're still knocking on that door. So if you took the whole concept in, wow, we could make such a difference.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I just think, in a world where, right, retention is difficult as well, and everybody's kind of chasing the best way to give value to staff and value their staff or whatever, then really having starting to have those holistic conversations with people about
but they've got to be genuine. My problem is a lot of the offerings seem to be tick boxes, or that's fine, we've got an app for that. And
yeah, look, folks, you can't create cheat sheets for business for everything. Right?
But there's got to keep humanity in healthcare, haven't you? And keep that human factor, because that's what we all need.
Absolutely. Folks, Katie, Cecilia, thank you so much for joining me. But if there was one last question, if you like, or area of topic that you'd like people to be thinking about with regards to what you do, what would that be?
Well, for me, it's just have a look at what you're struggling with and whether there's a way of making it easier to allow you to do the things that you want to do. And we're here to help with that. So, if you're struggling with admin, just regular letters, appointments, have somebody to work with on that, or whatever it is in your own situation, share that with somebody and take a little bit of help.
Oh yeah. So even if it's like, working out what bills you've got to pay and
literally, yeah. I go to a client who just wanted a cleaner, and I saw on his sofa a huge pile of letters, and I said, "Oh, should we have a go at opening one of those?" And each time I go, we just wade through them. And we've paid the car bills, the insurance, and the
isn't it? It's stuff like that, isn't it? Even like going, actually, should you still be paying for this? You haven't even got a car now, and you're paying for this now.
Yeah. Should we?
Crazy.
That's the question. Do you want to sawn the car? Oh no, I don't want to do that yet. So that's fine. That's your decision. It's thought about it rather than being in the pile, not done.
And then when they say, and this is going to feed over to Katie, and then when they say, I don't want to sawn the car, I still want to do it yet, and you go, but you're not getting out there and driving in it, and they go, well, that's because it hurts too much to drive. You go, well, that's why you need Katie.
Katie.
right? If you're gonna maintain that car and you're gonna give that car an MOT, you might as well give yourself an MOT at the same time.
Well, that's right. I mean, so what I would say that so physiotherapy shouldn't be all about rehab. It's about enabling. It's about giving the confidence to get people to move with the right support. And it doesn't matter what scale you are on that, frailty or falling off, it's deconditioning, and deconditioning can be reversed.
Yeah. Do you still want to go and see the grandchildren? Do you still want to go and do your weekly shop? Do you still want to do those sort of things? If you do, then, are you fit and able to do it? And if not, can we make you fit and able to do it?
Yeah. Can we put in little small goals to get you back to that?
Absolutely. Katie, Cecilia, thank you so much for joining us today. Hope you've enjoyed the conversation. I'm sure it's prompted a lot of you to stop and think. I'm getting older. What's going to happen when I need care? What's going to happen when my parents need care? What's going to happen if I suddenly fall tomorrow and, I perhaps need someone to look after me for a bit? All of these things may be now ticking around in your head. Do connect with Katie and Cecilia online and have those conversations. Start those conversations in your workplace as well if you haven't started them in the workplace. All of those things could make a real big difference in terms of retention, in terms of presenteeism going forward as well. Because people get really, really worried about what's going to happen when they get older, and yet they don't talk about it. If we started talking about it earlier on, then we can actually start living a little bit. That's the truth of the matter. Bye for now.
Bye.
Thank you.